Thanks for watching. If you enjoy scenic drives, small town charm, and a little winter adventure, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Today we're taking one of Eastern Oregon's most underrated winter routes, the drive from Pendleton to John Day. We're starting in Pendleton, a town famous for rodeo history and woolen mills, sitting right along the Umatilla River. In winter, Pendleton feels quiet, almost reflective. Frost hangs along the riverbanks, and the blue mountains rise to the southeast like a cold wall of pine and basalt. The journey to John Day is about 120 miles, mostly along Highway 395, and in summer, it's beautiful. In winter, it's dramatic. Climbing into the blues. Leaving Pendleton, you begin climbing almost immediately into the foothills of the Blue Mountains. Snow tends to stick here long after it melts in town. The road curves and rises, cutting through open ranch land before transitioning into timber. The higher you go, the quieter it feels. Ponderosa pines stand tall, their bark glowing orange against white snow. If you're lucky, you might spot mule deer moving through the trees, their breath visible in the cold air. This stretch can be unpredictable in winter. Storms sweep through quickly. One moment you're driving on clear pavement, and the next, snow begins swirling across the road in sideways sheets. It's beautiful, but it demands respect. Chains and good tires are not optional out here. Ukiah, a small pause in the mountains. About halfway into the mountains, you'll pass near the tiny community of Ukiah. In winter, Ukiah feels like a postcard from another century. Snow piles along fence lines, smoke drifts from wood stoves. The surrounding forest looks untouched except for the narrow ribbon of highway. If you stop here, you'll notice something rare: silence. Not city silence, true silence. The kind where you can hear snow falling from tree branches. Winter travel here isn't rushed, it's patient. Wide open high desert. As you descend out of the Blue Mountains, the landscape shifts dramatically. Trees thin out. The forest gives way to high desert ranch country. Snow doesn't always blanket this region the way it does in the mountains, but when it does, it transforms everything. Sagebrush becomes sculpted in white. Fence posts look like they're wearing little winter hats. The rolling hills stretch out in soft curves all the way to the horizon. This is classic Eastern Oregon. Big sky, big space, and very few cars. You'll pass through Long Creek, a small ranching town that feels like it exists outside of time. In winter, cattle gather close to barns, and the wind seems sharper out here, cutting across the open land. Winter light and storm drama. One of the most striking parts of this drive in winter is the light. Storm clouds often hang low over the hills, creating deep shadows and bursts of sunlight that illuminate entire ridges in gold. It's dramatic, cinematic, the kind of landscape that feels made for wide-angle lenses. If snow is falling, the flakes often swirl across the highway in gusts, almost like waves. Visibility can drop quickly. That's part of the experience. This is not an interstate drive. It's rural, winding, and beautifully exposed to the elements. Always check road conditions before making the trip. Winter here is serious business. Approaching John Day. As you near John Day, the terrain becomes more rugged. Rock formations begin to rise from the hills, hinting at the ancient volcanic history of this region. John Day itself sits in a valley surrounded by layered hills and colorful formations tied to the nearby John Day Fossil Beds National Monument. In winter, the town feels peaceful. Snow dusts rooftops, the river moves quietly through town. There's something cozy about arriving after a long mountain drive, especially when the air is cold and the sky begins turning pink at sunset. Why this drive is special in winter. The Pendleton to John Day route in winter isn't flashy. There are no massive resorts or crowded viewpoints. What you get, instead, is solitude, wide open landscapes, forested mountain passes, high desert beauty, authentic rural Oregon. It feels raw and real. There's something grounding about watching snow drift across sagebrush plains or seeing storm clouds roll over pine-covered ridges. It reminds you how vast and varied Oregon really is. As you begin working your way down toward John Day, something remarkable starts to happen. The sky takes over the entire experience. Up in the Blue Mountains, the trees hold your attention. The road curves tightly, snow clings to branches, and your focus is on pavement and elevation. But once you start descending into the open country, the horizon widens, and the sky suddenly feels enormous. Eastern Oregon skies in winter are something special. On clear days after a storm, the air turns unbelievably crisp. The cold seems to polish the atmosphere. You can see for miles, layers of ridges fading from dark blue to pale gray in the distance. The sky itself becomes a deep, saturated blue that feels almost painted on. Clouds move slowly here. They don't rush. They stretch long and thin across the horizon, sometimes glowing white against the darker hills. Other times they gather in towering formations, heavy, dramatic shapes that look like they're deciding whether to drop another round of snow. And when the sun begins to lower in the afternoon, the light changes everything. The hills surrounding John Day start to glow with soft gold tones. Snow on the slopes reflects warm pink hues. The sagebrush casts long blue shadows across the ground. It's the kind of light photographers chase, low, angled, cinematic. Sometimes you'll see breaks in the clouds where beams of sunlight pour through like spotlights onto sections of the valley. One ridge will be lit up bright and warm, while the next sits under cool shadow. It creates this layered effect that makes the entire landscape feel alive. If there are still storm clouds lingering behind you in the mountains, you might witness one of the most beautiful contrasts of the drive. Dark slate gray skies back over the Blue Mountains, while ahead toward John Day, the sky opens into pale gold and lavender. It's dramatic without being overwhelming. And if you happen to be on the road just before sunset, the sky can become the main event. Winter sunsets here are not subtle. The cold air holds color differently. Pinks are deeper, oranges burn brighter, purples stretch across the entire western horizon. Sometimes the clouds catch fire in brilliant streaks, while the valley below falls into calm shadow. The town of John Day begins to appear in the distance, small, quiet, nestled among rolling hills, and above it, the sky feels almost endless. There's something about descending into that valley in winter light that feels peaceful. The road straightens out, the curves soften, the mountains settle behind you, and overhead, the sky opens wide in a way that reminds you just how big Eastern Oregon really is. On especially clear evenings, once the sun drops, the twilight lingers longer than you expect. The sky fades from orange to rose, then into deep cobalt blue. And because there's so little light pollution out here, the first stars begin appearing quickly. Driving those last few miles toward John Day with snow lining the shoulders and the sky glowing overhead feels less like a commute and more like an arrival. It's quiet, expansive, almost meditative. The kind of winter sky that makes you slow down, not because of road conditions this time, but because you don't want to miss it. And that's the beauty of this drive. It isn't just about forests or high desert or small towns. It's about the sky, wide, dramatic, and constantly changing, guiding you down into John Day like a grand natural curtain call at the end of the journey. Really appreciate you watching. Thank you. Come back for more travel videos. Until next time, have a wonderful day.